Hey guys, it's Chris from Steeda and a little tech talk today about gear ratios and how the wrong gear ratio may be leading to slower lap times, whether it's at autocross or the drag strip. So I guess you're wondering how we got here. Personally, I've been doing a lot of learning about gear ratios and how they pertain to Mustangs and racing and everything else. I've known a little bit in the past. I know that, the 05 plus Mustangs, even the Fox body Mustangs, they really take well to a gear ratio change when you're working your way down the mod list after an intake and a tune and stuff like that. But with the newer cars, you never really had to change them. Ford got it right. For example, on the 2011 to 14 Mustang, you kind of know that if you have a 373 gear in the back and you have an MT82 transmission and a GT, that you're going to need a 28-inch tire in the rear to kind of really optimize to be at the top of fourth gear, rate about 7,100 RPM when you cross the traps at the 1320. Now, when it comes to autocross, I'm learning, especially with our EcoBoost Q350 build, that it really does matter what those gear ratios are, not only in the MT82 transmission. They especially matter with the EcoBoost because the power falls off so hard at the top of the power band, not to mention that 6,500 RPM rev limiter. Now, this doesn't necessarily always apply to the V8 cars because they have a much more desirable rev range, especially with that Coyote that can just rev to the moon. But these EcoBoost cars, it's a lot smaller. And personally, I have a lot more experience with the V8 cars. I raced EcoBoost as well in the autocross courses up in Pennsylvania, but not necessarily to a competitive level where we are doing with this KMC car here at Steeda. Not to mention, they're really putting a hurting on these 1LE Camaros, Corvettes, GT350s, and when you're racing at that level, you really need to make sure you're optimizing every single part of the car to win. So the team here at Steeda has done an awesome job at outfitting this EcoBoost with pretty much every part in our catalog, and then some. We prototyped our K-member on the car. We worked with Hawk Performance and our two-piece rotors to get the best optimal combination of brake pad on the car. We have all of our rear IRS components on the car. It is set up when it comes to handling and turning and braking and everything else. However, the last thorn in our heel, working our way down that checklist to make this car a competitor when it comes to those C7 Corvettes and those Camaros and everything else out on the autocross track, is the gears. So we were finding when we were racing at these kinds of speeds with the super sticky tires and everything else, that the gears were just leaving something to be desired. There were a lot of situations, even with the 331 gears that came from the factory originally on this car, that we were doing a lot of shifting between 2 and 3 on these high horsepower, long stretch courses, where everybody else was able to stay in second, and we were losing tenths, multiple tenths, half a second, shifting from 2 to 3, 3 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 2, and really just losing time. So the team, we put our heads together and figured out what was the best way to move forward in order to get that competitive advantage. And we looked at the rear gears because the transmission itself, it's unique to the V6 and EcoBoost. The bell housing's different. The transmission case length is different, which means we would need a different drive shaft if we wanted to retrofit a GT transmission in there. It just would be a ton of work. So the easiest thing we looked to do was the rear gears, just swapping out the rear diff and swapping in some 373 gears. So at the end of the day, the car is a machine. It's still a series of gears, and that's why there's a transmission in the car to get that power to the ground in the most efficient way possible. There's a multitude of variables that go into calculating the gear ratio, including speed, the tire diameter, the rear gear ratio, the transmission gear ratio in terms of what gear you're in, and then ultimately what you're looking for is the RPM. And if you're looking for a calculator like this, there's tons of them online. All you have to do is Google them. But first things first, you need to find out the diameter of your tire. So for the EcoBoost, we're running a 315/30/18 race tire, which came out to 25.4 inches in diameter. So what we did is we took the gear ratios for an MT82 transmission for a 15 to 17 EcoBoost in both second and third gear, because primarily those are the two gears we'll be in an autocross. And then we compared the speed and RPM of what we'd be able to get out of those gears with a 355 or a 373 in comparison to our 331. The issue we were having is that with a 331 gear in the rear of the car, we were running out of steam relatively quick with second gear just because of the natural gearing in the MT82, which the 331 allowed us a longer span. However, you go to third and the car fell on its face. It was limp and took a second for it to get back up into speed. And the gearing is what's gonna help us get that car out of the hole quicker when it's in the lower RPMs with a 355 or 373 in the rear in third gear. So in order to get the most grunt we possibly could out of third gear, we opted for the 373 since it was only about, I think, a 3 mile an hour difference in between a 355 and a 373 at the top of second gear at that 6,500 RPM red line. So what we did was we took the 331 out of the back of the EcoBoost and put in a 373 rear. Now personally, I couldn't really wrap my head around this because in an autocross atmosphere, you want to have as much second gear as possible. So I was thinking, okay, why not 315s or like something that would allow you to stretch out as much second gear as you could. But the idea is that we're in this situation because there isn't enough power at the top of the power band for second gear. So it wouldn't be usable anyways. So what we did is by putting the 373 in there, we were able to really lean into it, meaning you shift into third, and third is more usable because of that shorter gear in the back. So this past weekend was the first time we tried out the 373 gears on this setup with the EcoBoost Mustang, and it turned out really well. Well, for Jamie. I'm a little bit hard-headed. I was trying to get everything out of every gear that we were using, so I kept going 2-3, 3-2, 2-3, 3-2, which was costing me time across the board. Jamie put a good chunk of time on me because he realized, hey, I'm just gonna leave it in third. This is a high horsepower course. This is something with a lot of straights. We were actually racing at the Firm. So again, it was kind of a track cross situation, but Jamie really just pulled it out considering he got first in class in KMC and number 6 in PAX overall. Super impressive. So let's check out those runs. So all in all, it was a lesson learned for me. Keep it in third gear. If we're gonna be using those 373 gears, it's definitely gonna be more usable if we're gonna be moving quick through that course. Whereas you're gonna lose all kinds of time shifting from 2 to 3, 3 to 2. And for those of you that have EcoBoost Mustangs and you're looking to get more competitive in autocross, or any Mustang in general that wants to get more competitive in autocross, pay attention to the gear ratios, where you're shifting. Because any shift, whether it's up or down, it's gonna be costing you time. And if it's costing you time, that means it could be costing you that first place trophy as well. So I hope you learned something when it comes to gear ratios and how it pertains to RPM, transmission gear ratio, your rear gear ratio, tire size diameter, and everything else. When it comes to autocross, road racing, drag racing, or just having some fun on some back roads, all of it counts and really plays into the driving experience altogether. If you want to see the full build list on this car, check out the link in the top right-hand corner where you can purchase every part right here at steeded.com. Comment below, let us know if you've thought about changing rear gears on your car, and if you have any questions about them, we'd be happy to answer them. And don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification bell if you want to see more cool Ford and Mustang content, and don't forget the most important thing, speed matters.